Something I've always really enjoyed is discovering glitches in video games. Those weird little peculiar problems in the code that rise up that can sometimes completely change a game depending on how you play it. Like one that kind of comes to mind is back in the day we discovered that in the original Halo, if you switched weapons while running, you'd actually walk about 3% faster. So if you just constantly switched your weapons like this, you could pretty much fly all the way across the map. But what's happening right now within the Division 2 community is not a fun glitch, it is in fact something that seems to be completely breaking the entire experience. What's up gamers, DreamcastGuy here, and today we're going to be trying to analyze what specifically has gone wrong inside the Division 2 and how I think it very much relates to Anthem. So early this year, we got two very big games back to back, Anthem Division 2. Both of these also being games as a service projects, things that aren't just releasing, telling you a story and moving on. Instead, they're that new style of game that want to just perpetually exist, getting new updates, getting new content, and getting some big expansions to keep you addicted to its services. Well, what's interesting is, while the Anthem games just completely bombed, nobody played it really, after launch it pretty much just got forgotten, Division 2 really managed to build up a very dedicated and very skilled fan base. You see, even if you haven't played Division 2 itself, I really do recommend you look at some of the streams sometimes, or some of the other YouTube videos, because the people who are still playing it are very good. It's a squad-based shooter, but more than that, it's definitely an RPG. So people have really gotten technical in how to try and take down different bosses, handle different situations, and which type of gear and specializations are truly the best of the best. But here's the problem: despite the fact that people are continually growing in their different abilities to play the game, unfortunately, it seems like the game itself is completely destroyed on a code level when it comes to consoles. Now, as many of you know, I am a console gamer to my core. I have a pretty decent PC and I enjoy it and play some World of Warcraft on it, but for the most part, I love the fact that when it comes to consoles, I can just grab any game, put it in there, play it instantly. I don't have to worry about drivers, updates, none of that. It's all automatic. It's a nice little touch. Well, people who have been playing on PC of Division 2 have noticed that, in general, the game is much different, speed-wise, fighting-wise. In general, it seems like PC players are much more efficient at killing stuff, and it's not just the fact that they can aim faster. So people are trying to figure out what is really going on, and it seems like somebody has discovered that there is a huge glitch at the core of Division 2, which is that on console hardware, the game runs at 30 frames a second. Not a big deal, right? 30 FPS is fine. The human eye can totally detect it. However, when it is running at 60 frames a second on PC, it's actually picking up more bullets. That means if you get a gun and fire it at a target on the PlayStation 4, even as you watch the bullets hit that target, technically they count as misses because they're happening between frames. I want to call this problem the magic bullet, because you are literally firing shots that are vanishing into thin air instead of hitting your target, which means that fundamentally you're going to be doing dramatically less damage with equivalent gear. This is a humongous problem and is very fundamentally destroying the core loop of the game, and people are flipping out. And honestly, I think that they absolutely deserve it. Now, the reason I said that this is an Anthem-style glitch is because early on, Anthem was having some very big problems that were arising in very small forms. These weren't super widespread, but some of the stuff was like, people noticed that guns were having basically normalized damage. If you shot somebody with a level 1 gun, it could actually do more damage than a level 50 gun. It was just a problem at the center of its code where the game itself was unable to actually determine different aspects of its own combat engine. Anthem itself just keeps trying to fix things, and every time there's a new update, it seems like they break something else. It seems like the combat is constantly in a free fall of patch and update, break something else, patch and update, break something else. And unfortunately, this is that style of glitch. It is something that on the surface appears to be rather minor, but when you see the greater implications, you realize that this is completely and systematically breaking the freaking game. Now, the reason we know that this is such a big issue is because just about, I think 2 weeks ago now, they released the first major raid of the Division 2. Now, these are basically like these 8-man dungeons where everybody has to have the best gear, the best talents, and you have to be really, really good at the game. It's for the absolute pinnacle of the player base. But what was interesting is that when it came out, shortly after the release of this new raid content, people on PC were able to clear it. Within the first 24 hours, they had all 4 of the new super bosses down. Whereas on consoles, people could not. People were just having so much problems, and they were trying to figure out what it was. And it seemed like part of it was 30 frames a second players were actually turning slower. So when they were trying to react to different boss attacks or trying to shoot a weak point as it opened up, they physically could not turn as fast as PC players. And it did go beyond just a mouse and keyboard comparison. But what's funny is that people did eventually manage to kill some of the bosses in Division 2's raid on PS4, and they claim that some of the stuff, like even the opening enemy, took 10 hours to drop. A boss that took 10 hours to kill on the PlayStation 4. Now, I don't know about you, but for the most part, it seems like my PlayStation 4 controllers only hold about 4 hours of juice. If I'm super hardcore gaming or playing something that has like vibration in it, this thing lasts about 4 hours. Which means those dudes probably had to completely charge their controllers twice during one boss fight. And this is a pretty clear sign that stuff is messed up. Now, the developers themselves have now noticed the glitch because people are flipping out all over the Reddit, and they've started basically saying, we're looking into it, we need to investigate. Because when you look at the freaking descriptions of it, when you see the actual video footage of somebody getting a gun that is super accurate and shooting at a target and having nothing happen, clearly your game has some very deep and very insane issues. I think that this is so interesting to me because I legitimately think The Division 2 is great. When I reviewed it, I gave it a pretty high score, and I think that the universe is cool, the environments are fantastic, it is a very, very sharp game. But again, I only played it on PS4, so it does kind of disappoint me that a game that seemed to have pretty much unlimited opportunities within it is getting squandered by just such a tiny technical error. Game development is tough. I'm not acting like this stuff is something where you should just be able to wave a magic wand and instantly have it repaired. But I do think that this is a pretty clear failing of basically not having the best QA testers. If you're trying to have an online experience, especially something that's games as a service where everybody needs to constantly be updating and changing the universe to keep the player base excited, I think what you need to do is hire some of the very best gamers from the community to be your QA testers. The people who are able to push the limits of the game and understand every little infinitesimal detail of it are clearly going to be the best players and the best testers for situations like this that are so niche that only the top of the top would even be able to see it and understand what they're looking at. Currently, as I look at a weird situation like this, it does sort of worry me. It's part of the reason I really don't like games as a service projects, is because at any moment, the most perfect parts of it can be utterly broken by one tiny little glitch. Sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's awful, but I mean, some stuff that's coming up has already been leaked as a games as a service project, like the Avengers. This Avengers game is theoretically going to have a single player story, but also a huge focus on the ability to team up with other custom heroes and go around and adventure. But what happens if you're playing the game for 700 hours and having a blast, and then suddenly they patch it so Spider-Man is able to use Superman eye lasers? Well, that's going to pretty much break the meta, and if you chose to be somebody else, well, you're going to be pretty much screwed. But what do you think of it? Do you actually think that glitches like this are a big deal? Are you still playing The Division 2, and are you as against games as a service titles as I am? Or do you think that this is just an inevitable part of the future? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, share with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already. But do me the biggest favor of all and keep dreaming. Oh man. Sometimes people get mad at me for talking about Anthem. This is not an insult on Anthem. I mean, at this point, Anthem's dead, so I don't know if there's anybody left to even get mad at me. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.